Okay, I'm excited about today's video. I'm taking you out on location yet again. As you know, if you've been following along, that's generally where I shoot, on the fly. So today I'm actually going to interview a customer. So check that out. Now, what some of you may not realize is it's not that easy shooting on location. I got a schedule to consider. I've got customers that are coming and going. Sometimes their wife or husband is coming and going. There's a lot of things, in the background that you guys aren't aware of. So if I could, I would pull customers in. I'd interview them for you. I would spend more time on the cars if I could, but I really have to pick and choose my moments. So this moment, things came together, and I'm always thinking, okay, what can I teach you guys in this moment? And that's another point I wanted to make, is that if you have watched more than a couple of my videos, I hope you're getting a sense that I'm trying to teach you more than just detailing. So I'm essentially trying to teach you what I call life skills, okay? Communication skills, life skills. So the reality is that whether you end up in detailing long-term, short-term, or no-term, you walk away with something that's going to be useful in your life regardless of what you do, regardless of where you go, because each one of you, whether you're trying to get in the business, you're sitting on the fence, or you're shortly into the business, you need to look at you as an individual as your own business, which means imagine yourself like a structure, okay? What do you have to offer? What skill sets? Communication skills, problem solving skills, organizational skills. These are all things that are going to help you regardless. It's just that if you happen to go into the world of detailing, obviously I'm teaching you some very specific stuff under the context of detailing, but at a broader level, I want to teach you stuff that you can take regardless of what you do, that will help you down the road so that you are your own business and you can go from job to job, business to business, and always have something to bring to the table. So that's really my goal. Hopefully you've kind of clued in on that. Anyhow, so I'm going to cover a lot of things today. I'm going to do some polishing techniques. I'm going to use the Rotary buffer. I'm going to do some paint touch-up. I'm going to actually interview this customer, and he's going to give some feedback himself. So there's a lot to cover. I'm excited about it because I think it really came together, and I think you guys are really going to learn something. And once again, thanks for supporting my cause. I appreciate it. It allows me to put these videos together. And I think that's it. So let's get started. Okay, here we are today. We are in lovely Brea, and coincidentally, this is where I grew up. Right behind me, which I'll pan out in a moment, is where my high school used to be. Not that you care whatsoever, but I thought I'd use this moment. What I'm doing is a little, what you would call this is a little buffer touch-up, paint repair. This is Doug, by the way.
Hey, everybody.
Doug has been kind enough, and that's what you guys don't realize is I have to shoot on location. It's not always convenient. As a rule, I don't announce it to my customers. It's like, hey, Johnny customer, guess what? I'm going to use your car in a video, and I'm going to air it to the world. Okay, so that's not how it works. So I got to pick and choose my moments. And when I come across a moment that I think I can teach you guys something, I want to use it. So often I have to do things on the fly and kind of covertly. And if obviously my customer came up and they had a problem with it, then I'm going to have to nix the video. Most of them are okay with it, but it's not like I can just sit here and interview my customers, which I wish I could, so I could teach you guys more. So I asked Doug. I know he's pretty laid back, so he agreed. So the point is a couple things here is when you're dealing with customers, as a beginning detailer, the obvious is obvious, which is you got to learn your techniques and your skills. But until you develop them, you're not always going to know your own capabilities. And I talk a lot about managing expectations. Well, it's tough to manage expectations when you're unclear as to what your capabilities are. So that is going to be a learning curve. I'm just doing my best to help you speed up that learning curve. But when it comes to customers, now I'll tell you this, Doug is my brother-in-law. So right there in your head, you may think, oh, well, that doesn't count, Darren. I mean, how hard is he going to be? Trust me, just because it's family members, brothers, sisters, moms, dads, brother-in-laws, sister-in-laws, aunts, uncles, whatever, they can have unrealistic expectations like anyone else in the world. Now, Doug, we actually didn't discuss price. Doug actually probably thinks I'm going to charge him something, which I'm not. So before I started filming this, I started asking him some questions, because what we have here, and I'll show you, and then I'll pull back in and talk with Doug a little bit more, but what we have here is some bumper scuffs. And Doug was backing out, what was it, in the morning on your way to work?
Right.
Backing out to go to work, and so was his neighbor. So we have some scuffs here. We've got a little actual paint chip here. We've got some transfer. So really what this is problem solving. And before you can problem solve, you have to assess. Now sometimes you need to ask questions. Sometimes you just do a visual inspection. So I know through experience that what I have here is a combination of transfer from the other car, and as a rule, when I remove that transfer, there's going to be some permanent damage, because I can tell right here there's some missing paint. There's some missing paint here. So it's going to be a combination of doing a few things. So I got a call from Doug a few weeks ago, and we've been trying to coordinate this for a few weeks, but my generator's been in the shop. So, but I always verify my appointments. I called you last night, made sure he was going to be at work today. I called him this morning because I thought I was actually going to be here a little bit later in the morning. Anyhow, communication is king, and keep your customer informed. So I was asking Doug, it's like, okay, what do you think this would cost if you went to the body shop? I think, Darren, what would you say? What did you say?
Yeah, about $300.
About
maybe.
$300. The reality is with a body shop, and I have the same conversation with people on the phone. And one of you mentioned on one of my videos, it's like, hey Darren, why don't you have the guy send you a picture? I think it was on that knucklehead down in Laguna Beach that took the touch-up paint and just slopped it all over his front end. Well, I already knew I was going to get paid for the job. It didn't matter because I had done enough. I dug deep enough into the conversation on the phone to know I'm not coming down unless I get paid, and I know I can always improve it. And so that's all I really needed to know. But with modern technology, phones. So, you know, I'm old school, so I'm having to play catch up because one of you mentioned, it's like, hey Darren, take the picture. I do it, but I often forget because I'm still trying to play catch up with technology. I just got my new, have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen this.
No. What is this called? iPhone 6 Plus, I think. Check that out, kids. Boy, is Darren overcompensating for something or what? What's called getting old. Okay, it's called eyesight. So the point is with pictures can tell a lot. So that is a very good technique. Have Johnny customer, in this case it's Doug the customer, take a picture, they can send it to you, and you can begin to assess. And that's where I can start looking at what I'm dealing with, start to manage expectations and ask questions. So I'll ask the customer, okay, why did you call me? Did you take it to a body shop? What are your options? And they'll often ask me that. What are my options, Darren? Well, you have the body shop, or, well, let's go down the list. You have the body shop, obviously that's gonna be the most expensive. Now the body shop can range, like this example, $300, I think you definitely could get it done if you found the right body shop. I guarantee there's body shops around here, they're gonna charge about $750, depending upon who you go to and how particular they are. Because with this, they don't know exactly what panels they're gonna have to repaint until they take off the transfer themselves. So they could shoot the entire section, or they may be able to buff it and remove and repair one section and then only end up painting another section. So there's a huge spread with body shops. And then you have mobile guys like me but they do full bumpers, meaning they're set up with compressors and spray guns, and they'll literally come out and sand your car and repaint an entire panel, bumper, whatever. Okay, those mobile guys at a minimum for this job would be about $275 to $425. Yes, it's convenient. Those guys, just like detailers or anything else, they're not all created equal. Then you have a guy like me, and I can take care of a lot of stuff, but I'm the cheapest route of entry. So if you're not a do-it-yourselfer kind of person that has polishes or compounds or touch-up paint laying around the house, which most people won't, then it's like, okay, I'm gonna call a guy like Darren, because I can do wet sanding, buffing, I've got a full touch-up paint. So I'm the next point, or the first point of entry before you get to those other levels. Every one of us represents certain trade-offs. Okay, the trade-offs for me is that it's not gonna be absolutely perfect. And I tell the customer that, Doug, it's not gonna be absolutely perfect.
And I understand that.
See, he's already reasonable. He already knows that. Okay, never mind, okay, yeah, he's getting it for free, it's his brother-in-law, whatever. But he didn't know that. He actually thought he was gonna be paying me something. But I figure if I can't do it for my brother-in-law, who can I do it for, right? So, and
well, there's
tell
still
us your job.
There's still probably your favorite treat maybe might be involved with this, but anyway.
Oh, well, you know I am trying to keep my girlish
Yeah,
figure.
aren't we all?
What do you do across the street?
Oh, I work for the city of Brea. I'm in their building division. I do all their plan check.
So, and you have to be a bit on the meticulous side, don't
Very
you?
much so.
Yeah, detail oriented.
Yeah.
So the point is even if it's family members, because that's what I recommend to a lot of you guys, is you've got to gain that experience. And when you go out to do a car, it's more about just learning technique and products. It's also dealing with customers. That's a huge part of it. People like dealing with people they like. So the first point of contact, whether it's on the phone, in person, that's where you start building that rapport, that trust. You start asking questions. You try to assess how they're looking at the situation, what their tolerance is for pain. And by pain, I mean money. It's like, okay, Johnny customer, here are your options. Have you considered them? There's some trade-offs. The trade-off for me is it's not going to be perfect, but I promise you I'm going to do better than you can do as the car owner. I'm as convenient as it gets because I come to you. And the other ones also have trade-offs. So like the next step, the guy that's going to sand and repaint the whole panel, well, you may or may not know if he's going to use single-stage paint or do a two-stage process. That's a big difference, because going down the road in 6 months, it may be a very rude awakening. And then the body shop, as I like to tell people, once your car hits the body shop, it is never the same. You know, from overspray on the rest of the car to body panels that don't fit correctly after they have to put them back on, whatever. So me personally, I'm willing to live with a certain level of imperfection in order to avoid the body shop. But sometimes it's just a necessary evil. So this is how I talk to people on the phone prior. We talk about price. I always give a price range. So if I was telling Doug, and because I have a website, which is very useful in my world, keeps me busy, and I get two types of people. I get people that literally just go to my website, they see that I can do the work, and they just call me. That's it. That's not really the person I'm looking for, but I deal with those people anyways. What I'm looking for is the person that goes to my website, they do the research, they look at the pictures, they say, okay, Darren looks like a guy that I want to hire, and they already know the approximate price that they're gonna pay. But I confirm that. So if Doug had called me and had looked at my website, but because he's a family member, he knows that this is my business and my world. So it'd be like, yeah, Doug, I charge based on your description. Let's say I did get the picture. Based on what I'm seeing, based on the description, I'm gonna charge you $150 to $200 to come out there. And then maybe he'd freak out and go, oh, wow, really that much? I wasn't really prepared to pay that. Well, you don't have to pay that. And I'll tell you your options. And then suddenly He's like, oh, that's right, I didn't consider those options. Darren sounds like the winning combination. Okay, so I've just readjusted his perspective. I've readjusted his expectations, but I'm going to dig in a little further and I'm going to explain the process. It's like, okay, with those types of accidents and based on the picture, I can guarantee there's probably going to be a combination of transfer, which means paint from the other person's car transferred onto your car. Once I remove that, I can almost guarantee there's going to be some damage. But I can do some color sanding if I need to. I can do some polishing, and I can do some touching up with paint touch-up. So that when you're passing by your car, no one is going to automatically hone in on that, because it's going to be camouflaged or removed or disguised so that it doesn't jump out at you. So Doug, in his head, hopefully he's coming to some conclusions, which is, oh, you know what? That's a pretty good combination. I like that. And for 150 to 200 bucks, is that what I said? I think it was. That sounds like a winning deal. So it's important to manage those expectations from the beginning. Then when I get out here and I have that spread, that $50 spread, and that gives me some wiggle room, because if it ends up being more than I thought when I get out here, because even though pictures say 1,000 words, but what if the picture needed to say 1,001 word, and that one word was the missing element of the moment, that I need that $50 spread to adjust so that I can walk away making money, rather than either walking away not making money or actually losing money in time. So there's a lot to learn, and this is my goal. And thank you, Doug, because I don't always get these moments, and I know you guys, I know I would. If I was in your shoes, I would love to see these moments. Like, okay, how does Darren talk to customers? Now, Doug's my brother-in-law, and so you think, oh, well, Darren, you're just talking casually to him. Not really. This is how I talk to people. I mean, I don't know if you can attest to that, but I'm pretty direct.
Yes.
Probably a little too direct sometimes. Anyhow, so hopefully you've learned something. Is there anything you want to add to, let's say, a guy starting out, or maybe he's a customer's perspective? I know the whole brother-in-law thing, but is there anything that you could add that you'd be like, hey, Darren, maybe you should do this or that, or anything that comes to mind?
No, I mean, like in my business, I deal with customers on a daily basis. And like you said, you've got to have that communication with your customers. You've got to understand where they're coming from, and they got to understand where you're coming from. You got to meet in the middle somewhere. You got to come to a happy medium, happy conclusion. And so, yeah, I totally agree with you. You've got to have that communication with your customers. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you don't dig in and ask those right questions, there's no way you could understand how they're looking at the situation.
Exactly. And the key is to listen. I mean, to listen to people, to what they're saying, how they're saying it, what they're saying. Listen to key words, pick up on key words, and then you know exactly where to go.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's interesting, and I drive this into my kids' heads over and over again, is, going through school, we're taught how to read, how to write, proper grammar, those types of things, but rarely are we truly taught how to listen.
Right.
And listening isn't just you keeping your fat trap shut and acting like you're listening. Listening is, there's a goal behind listening, and that is to empathize and understand and essentially put yourself in their position, the other person's position, so you can see things through their eyes.
Exactly.
That's what you're listening for.
Right.
And until you learn how to listen, you're never really going to be able to do what I call problem resolution, resolve problems, or come up with new strategies, new plans. In this case, what's the strategy of this? What's the plan? Are we both on the same page? So, very good points. Anything past that?
No, I think that's just the paramount issue is dealing with your customers is listening. Like Darren says, don't hear. There's a difference between hearing and listening. Listening is, having empathy, sympathy, whatever it is, and trying to find a way to come to a solution that your customer is satisfied.
Well put.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let Doug get back to work. And I'm going to bring you in and I'm going to show you some steps that I'm going to do with this. I'll show you the before. I'll bring Doug back out here. Obviously he's going to have to come back out and pick up the car, and let's go with that. Okay, I believe I am mostly set up. I've got my bucket of cleaners here. I've got my 2 spray products, my polisher, my polish pads and polishes, my touch-up paint kit, and it is applied colors. I know one of you asked. I would not worry about that at the beginning. If you are a beginning detailer and you want to do something like this, what you could do is you could have or learn the techniques to remove the transfer and do the polishing. Then you could just get the factory touch-up paint rather than spending the $1,000 I had to spend to custom mix it up in the moment. I've got my generator that I just had serviced, had a couple parts that needed replacing. And in case for those that are following, I have my new air compressor, which I am taking back. Why? Because when I had to assemble this, which required literally putting this handle on and the wheels, it's like, wow, talk about cheap. And I grew up on Craftsman. So I'm gonna trade this, I'm gonna return it this morning when I'm done and get a DeWalt. Really pisses me off. And I'm thinking, you know what, if they can't even get the fasteners, one of the fasteners actually stripped because it's so cheaply made. One of the fasteners actually stripped when I was installing the handle. So I'm going to return that, and now as you can tell, I'm reconfiguring my van. Sorry, a little side note there. So let's go in. So this car is dirty, has not been washed. Looks like it's actually been run through the rain. I've got my EcoSmart ready to use by Chemical Guys. Actually, I just use the ready use bottle. This is how I tested it first. I love it. So now I buy the concentrate, but I keep the bottle and I mix the concentrate and use this. So I'm just gonna pre-clean the area, and I use this. And don't anyone freak out. It's like, oh, Darren, wow, used it right over the dirt. It's like, yeah, I did. Trust me, it's not gonna matter. Okay, this is where you just don't need to overthink things. See that dirt? And it is a waterless wash product, and literally this is how you would do it. But what I need to do is expose what I'm actually dealing with. I don't want to deal with the dirt. That's easy. I want to figure out the next step, which is transfer. So now I've got my solution of rubbing alcohol and distilled water that I always carry with me. And when it comes to transfer, it's pretty straightforward. You can use a chemical, you can use an abrasive. Those are really the 2 ways. Now this is a magic eraser pad. It's obviously been used. This will abrade the paint, but you control that. I can use it very lightly and take off transfer, which is not coming off because I'm using it too light. The lighter I use it, the more safe it is. And the opposite is true. The more I rub, the harder I rub, it will abrade the paint. But I already know I'm gonna have to polish this. So I don't really care that I'm abrading the paint, because in order to get this transfer off, because nothing in the world of detailing is alike. Water spots, paint correction, it ultimately is a case by case. And you start with the rules, and then you just adapt based on what you're getting. So you test, you experiment, and then you process that information, and then you either change course or you continue on the course that you thought you could remain on. So I always start with the magic eraser as a rule because it's so quick and easy, especially since I know I'm gonna have to polish anyways. And even if you don't know how to use a buffer, you could polish this out by hand. Now it's taking away most of it, but you can still see there's a little bit there. So I can use something like straight rubbing alcohol, which this is, and see if that will chemically break that down, that transfer. And once again, and it is, by the way. You can't really see it yet until I pull this cloth away, but it is breaking it down. But because I'm rubbing so hard and so many times, that's where I know that perhaps the winning combination is to just continue with the magic eraser. But you do have some options, and rubbing this hard and this long is going to abrade the paint also. And I don't know if it's showing up, but the transfer looks like it's almost completely gone. Actually, I'm going to just do a little more of this and make sure it's completely gone. This is almost like, if I rub hard enough and long enough, it's almost like an in-between of doing nothing and color sanding, because the paint is abraded that much. Now I can see right here on the edge of this that there's missing paint. And I know it's not from me because all the pressure was being applied here. So there's a little bit of, let me just verify. Okay, actually, that was a little more transfer that I had failed to remove. Well, no, see, yeah, maybe I can polish that out. So, but the fact is this is abraded. It will have to be polished, but the transfer is now gone. So I know that I can fix this section of this just by this and with some polish. But now I have the rest of the section, and I'm just going to go through and do the same thing. And as I'm working, I just keep an eagle eye. How's that for the little metaphor of the day? An eagle eye. And that wow. That should suggest that I have this hyper fixated eye that I'm applying to my work as I go, so that I can keep track of doing just the right amount rather than creating more work for myself or actually damaging the area in a way that I cannot fix it. And really, every fix will be a case by case. And sometimes you have to pick the lesser evils. And sometimes you have to create one evil that is lesser in order to find that winning combination. So let's say this scratch was in an area that I know I'm not going to be able to get to. So I can either put some touch-up paint on it and have that still be visible, or maybe I can polish it, but maybe I'll have to burn a little edge because I can't tape it up. But the trade-off is that it's going to be 95% removed. So sometimes you just are left to make a judgment call, and that's where you as a professional and having experience will be able to do. But sometimes the customer would have chosen differently if you had given them the option. Usually I don't. I make executive decisions all day long because I know that customers lack the experience themselves, and so therefore they'll sit and overthink it and become so emotionally attached to the moment, and then it'll just waste time. So I'll make a decision, and then I'll just know how to explain why I came to that decision, and based on my experience, why that is the winning combination. So that's what I'm doing in the moment as I actually work on this stuff. So I think all the transfer, oh, there's a little more here. Yep, that was some more transfer. So what I have now, let me just clean this up really a little cleaner, so I can really see what's left over. Working in parking lots, by the way, I rarely do it anymore because I'm not fully contained. As great exposure. I mean, everybody and their brother has to look. It's like, oh wow, what's that guy doing over there? And that's where you can hand out a lot of cards and just get great exposure. But you're also exposed to code enforcement of cities. Every city is different. There's literally a part of the city department called code enforcement. They literally drive around and see businesses people that are breaking codes, and you could get popped for it if you're unlucky. I think there's a little more here. And fingernails are a great tool, by the way, because they're really pretty safe. Unless you've got some real sharp edges to your fingernails, they're actually very safe for the paint when used correctly. So don't underestimate the power of natural tools like your fingernails. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to polish away all my abrasions. I'm going to see what has polished away completely. I can tell that there's some areas that will have to be touched up with paint. So that will be the next step of the plan. I'm going to do my best to avoid having to do any wet sanding, because that's a whole nother process and tools, and I only do that if I have to. In this case, it's a non-issue. I can tell I'm going to be able to polish this away and do a little touch up, and we'll be good to go. So let me pull you in for a real close look. So we had the transfer here, we had it here, some down here, some right on this edge. Now every one of these, this little section alone is like a detailer's nightmare when it comes to buffing, because you have all these specific areas. Now I know in order to remove this abraded paint is not going to require too much, but I'm still going to tape it up, as I'll show you, because this would then come under the category of risk management. So I'm going to polish this away, then I'm going to take out my touch-up kit, mix up a little paint, apply it to these areas, and go from there. Now when it comes to all these different angles and surfaces and edges, you literally have to, it's kind of like the saying, how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. How do you fix something like this? Well, one step at a time. So the next step, so you've got the basic steps of removing the superficial dirt, removing the transfer, polishing, and then touching up the paint. So those are the basic steps. Now each step has to be strategized. So this one, I'm trying to polish out the abraded areas. So I have to break it down. And I'm going to use my rotary polisher, because to me it's easier on these areas because the buffer pad is wider, so I can get the edge of it into tighter areas versus like the DA. Yes, I could fix this with the DA, but I learned on the rotary. I've been using the rotary as long as I've been detailing. So I've got my Menzerna, and I know I've been using this literally in every video. Why? Because I like it that much. And I've got my slightly used wool bonnet. Now I'm not going to break out the pad washer for this. I'm just using what's called a spur. It's literally like the spurs on the cowboys used to wear in their boots. That's what they would dig into the horse to make him go faster or slow down. So I just use that. And it fluffs up the fibers. I'll show you how much polish I'm going to use for this. Now, because normally I just put the polish in the middle, but because I know I'm going to be using the edge of the buffer, I actually put about 10 little drops all around the entire section. And this has a soft touch trigger, so I just start out very soft. Kind of work the compound around. Because I don't want it to sling everywhere. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of seasoning the pad, at the same time spraying a little compound around here. Actually have this set too low. It's at 600 right now. As a rule, I generally set it at about 1400 RPMs. But because it's got a soft touch trigger, I can start it at 600 with just a trigger, but it will only go as fast as this trigger or this style setting here. also with the wool pad is I can cut to the excuse me, I can cut to the chase. Now you'll notice as I was polishing, because I want to polish this is the panel I'm focused on. This becomes very vulnerable, and that's why I tape it off, so I can sit here and just focus on this and know that this section and this rounded edge is totally protected. And this has been polished enough. Where it's like, okay, that's good. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to polish all these areas with the wool pad, and then I'm going to untape everything, and then I'm going to finish with a, I'll probably pull up my DA buffer just for you guys. I don't know, we'll see. Anyhow, so I'm going to break this down section by section. So now I'm ready to move on to the next section, and I can actually, you know, to cut to the chase, use the old tape a lot of times. We'll see. Yeah, that's doable. So now my next section is right here. So once again, I'm gonna tape off. I'm gonna tape off this edge right here, because this will be the edge that will be exposed when I'm buffing. Because I need to get the buffer down in here. I actually have to buff this edge and this edge. And I had someone just write in and say, hey Darren, how about using the buffer on edges? What do you do? Well, that's where you remain in control based on your selection. I mean, you can truly custom tailor it to the moment based on the pad choice, the polish choice, your speed setting, how long you allow the buffer to sit there, how hard you push, or how much you lift off the pressure. So you have complete control. Everything past that is going to be based on experience. Unfortunately, that's what a lot of you lack, is experience, and that's why you got to start out on your car, your friend's car, or sign up for a class, whatever. Now, just so you know, if I was to be doing some true paint correction, like, you know, the whole car, I would not lift up on the edge. The only time you lift up on the edge is in order to get into a very tight spot, or if you want to apply some heavy duty or polishing. Because if you lift up on the edge like this, you have to understand that it's going to create some major swirl marks or buffer tracks or holograms, call it whatever you want. But I know how to control it, and I know what I'm doing. So I will use it appropriately, which means that I will use it when needed, but I also know that I will have to come back with a finer polish and a flatter pad in order to remove my swirl marks. But I have a very specific strategy in mind, and I need that edge in order to cut to the chase, get the job done, and move on to my next step of polishing. Okay, now I'm going to remove this. And now this section will be the section that needs to be protected. So I'm just going to lay the tape across there, because all I'm worried about now is this edge, because now I have to polish down here. This has been you know, now cleared off from tape because there's abrasions here, so I will have to be careful and strategic of how I polish these flat sections, but also get this edge, but do so in a safe manner. And this, once again, is where control comes in. You have control. know, it probably looked like I was really grinding on this edge, but what you don't have privilege is really seeing exactly where the pressure is being applied. So I can hold it here and focus on this edge here, or this panel here, but then I can tilt it and focus on this panel, always being aware that this edge is vulnerable and exposed. So once again is awareness. And you may have noticed I actually caught the tip of the tailpipe. Why? Because I'm hyper focused here and then I forget about here. And that's why awareness of everything going on is very critical. And even at this stage of my life, I still get caught. Now, if I really thought that was a problem, I would have taped it off or said to myself, Darren, okay, make sure you watch out for that tailpipe. But really, it's a non-issue. So before I turn my generator off, I'm going to use my rubbing alcohol and distilled water and make sure I have gotten everything that I need to with my buffer before I turn it off. Okay, and this is where I'm assessing. It's like, okay, at this point, actually there's some scratches there. That would actually require, see, that's, I do this is what's called a fingernail test. If I can grab the edge of a scratch with my fingernail, which I can here, that's a pretty big indicator that it's through the clear coat or deep into the clear coat. And I already know this isn't going to be perfect. So that would be a moment where the trade-off of trying to sand this and polish it and protect all these other areas, the trade-off to me is not worth it for the type of car that we're dealing with. You know, if this was a $300,000 Ferrari, I would be making a different decision. But I'd also be charging the guy $400 or $500, not $150 to $200. So it looks like my polishing, let's see, no, okay, I see down here there's still some more abrasions or some just abraded paint, so let me hit that real quick. Okay, a couple things I want to point out is during the video you'll notice that this buffer starts to hop. Now that is the trade-off with using a rotary, is A, I can cut to the chase, but it is a more difficult tool to use, especially on these contoured panels. If I had the DA, I could really, it's just a lot easier. Never mind, I can use it with one hand. This, as a rule, is always going to require two hands, unless it's on a flat panel where I can rest it, but I still have to use a lot of control with this hand. So, and this is kind of like doing a car for the first time, is all the nuances and angles and edges of this panel. Every time you hold the buffer in a certain direction or a certain manner, it's going to tend to grab and want to pull it in a direction on its own. It's like it has a mind of its own, and that's where you as the user have to control it, and you will control it based on pressure that you're pushing down and the angle in which you tilt it, and it's all based on the rotation of this head, and it only spins in one direction, which the generator's off now, and I'm pretty sure, of course, depending on which way you look at it will determine which way it's spinning, whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise. The point is you will have to compensate for that spinning head. So let's say it's spinning clockwise. Because the pressure is going that way, it will tend to want to pull the buffer in the opposite direction. So you will have to compensate for that with pressure with this hand. But every time you change a panel, because they're not all perfectly flat panels, every time you move the buffer, it's going to change the way, the manner or the way in which that buffer wants to pull. And so there will be this adjustment period, because I think you will have noticed that at the end I was much more controlled, because that's me learning and adapting to the nuances of this panel. So at the beginning it's normal to have a lot of hop, and you may think, oh my gosh, I'm putting like swirl marks in the paint. Well, kind of, but that's where you learn the nuances, you learn to adapt, you learn as you go over each section. It's like, okay, I need to start lifting up the pad here, I need to start rotating it the opposite direction there, and that's where that learning curve plays into, and then you're just responding based on your experience the first, second, or third time. Now you know it, now you can get it more smooth, now you can finish taking out the swirl marks and finish polishing to perfection. So my polishing is done. The next step, as we decided at the beginning, was that I was going to get that done and then proceed into the touch-up paint. So I just want to remove my polish, and no, I don't have to spray this cleaner on it every time to remove my polish. I'm doing that because I know I have to prep the area anyways, make sure it's clean of any polishes before I apply the touch-up paint. And I'm also double checking my work and making sure that this stage is complete before I move on. It's always quicker in the long run to double check your work and make sure you've done it completely the first time, rather than realize later it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't polish this area, or there's still some abrasions through here, and then have to repeat your work. Just like I teach my kids, do it right the first time. Trust me, it will be quicker if you just do what it takes to do it right the first time. Okay, we're live. So I've got my applied colors here. I'll just walk you through the process briefly, because it's not meant to be a tutorial on how to use their system, but they've got a color palette here. You match, essentially what you do is you match up the closest color to this palette. You mix it up based on the measurements here, and then you just tweak it as needed when you're applying it. So you may add the next color to it to lighten it up, or the next color above it to darken it up. So that's really, that's a gross oversimplification. Once again, that's not part of this. I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna do it. I'll show you the after results. Okay, I have finished. So this is, I will literally take you through what I do with a customer. And in fact, let me pull Doug over here. Hey Doug, do you mind?
Let's do it.
Cool. So, hi Doug.
Hey.
I called Doug back because I'm done. So his first words like, oh wow, I don't know, what'd you say, amazing or awesome? Okay, we'll go with awesome. I'll take awesome all day long. So, but this is what I tell customers, and if you recall at the beginning of the video, I said, Doug, it's not going to be perfect. And he said, Darren, I know it's not going to be perfect. So this is where we come in and we talk about the trade-offs or the winning combination. And as I stated at the beginning, it's not going to be perfect, and guess what? It's not. So if you look right here, this is the most significant part that we can see that's visible to the eye. But like anything, if you don't like what you're seeing, well, just back up. And you just keep backing up until you like it. So, and you may think that's ridiculous, and it is absurd at a level, but I like to use absurdities to illustrate the point. And the point is that often you have to reel your customer in off of the edge of the cliff because they're in freak out mode. It's like, oh, Darren, what am I going to do? Well, maybe you have unrealistic expectations, and maybe it's not appropriate for your car. You know, it's a daily driver, so it's a jungle out there. So here is what I consider the winning trade-off. All the transfer is gone. The paint's been polished and buffed. It actually looks better than it did before. I applied, see, even right now as I'm trying to look and remember where I had to apply touch-up, I even have to look for it. But here it is, here and here was the areas that I knew there was, you know, I had to touch up with the touch-up paint. This area is the most visible still. And that's the problem with cars, is every time you change perspective, it's like life, you know, and that's how you figure out a problem, is you keep circling it. Because every time you circle it and you change lighting or perspective, it's going to reveal something different. And if it's something different that you don't like, then that means it's something that you want to try to change. But the same is true with repairs like this. So you have to educate the consumer or the customer and say, hey, this is the reality, this is the nature of the beast. So I put some touch-up paint here, and based on the lighting in which you look at it, it will either be more visible or less visible. But in normal viewing distances, as Johnny, customer, comes and goes from his car, he gets in it, he gets out of it, this is what I consider normal viewing distances. Okay, so all you guys go up to your girlfriend or wife and get really close to their face. Okay, A, they're not going to appreciate it, and B, you're going to see all the blemishes and flaws, right? Well, that's why they put makeup on. So at normal viewing distances, they look perfect. So it's very similar to cars, because we're talking about cosmetics here. So is that a fair comparison?
Very, very, yeah.
And by the way, there's my sister to the right. Say hi, Heather.
Hello.
All right, so that's our lesson for the day. I hope you have learned something.